All right, if we can go ahead and call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order, if we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I was going to say, doing roll call, everyone is present, but I looked to my left and there was nobody here, so I had to check myself for a second. Everybody is present. Let's see, we've got a few changes to the order of our agenda for this meeting. We're going to move, building official update is going to be moved to the November Committee of the Whole meeting. Yeah, I know. And then we are also going to change BMX voting member position to the first item we discuss. Street dances discussion will be the second item we discuss, and the snowmaking discussion will be the third item we discuss. And then we will have everything else fall in line after that, So we will go ahead and start with the BMX voting member position.
Do we need a motion to approve the agenda with the changes?
I don't believe we have an actual set
Okay.
agenda for Committee of the Whole, so.
Sounds good.
Tim, if you would like to go up there, we have Tim from Rum River BMX here. He made the agenda request, so.
Okay.
All right, so this was talked about at our board meeting after Jeff started coming to the board meeting. And then we read more about the, the original documents and that it's a voting member. And with Dan not really coming to the meetings, we didn't, we never knew about that before, which we totally welcome the city being there, there's no reason for you guys not to be at a board meeting. Our only thing was wondering about the voting member portion of it, if that was necessary, for a couple reasons. I mean, I know the whole BMX arena is unique anyways, but if there's an additional board member now that we didn't know before, that puts us at an even board. So we would have to create another position so we could stay offset, so there's less votes that are, it's always an odd number of votes then. So, yeah, we're not necessarily saying we don't want you there. That's not the case at all. Like, we hope that somebody comes every time just to see what we have going on. We just didn't know that the voting member thing was necessary. Didn't know really your thoughts on it. And like I said, with having to add another board position, that kind of puts us into a position where we have to create another position, so.
So Jeff makes it an even number of board members? Can't you change the bylaws maybe to have the chair have the deciding vote? So if it's a 4-4 vote, the chair can break the tie?
We do have a tiebreaker with two of the appointed positions, the TOs, in the event of we don't, maybe somebody doesn't come that day and we have an even amount of votes, then they would be the tie-breaking decision. We were also additionally wondering what the need was for their council member to have a voting, seat on the board. Originally, obviously, the whole thing was based on whether or not we survived or not,
Right.
But,
Right.
Over time, we've kind of proved that we can handle it, so most of the board basically was just questioning that.
Yeah, I think it's just there probably to protect us because we do have some risk as a city being involved in it. I mean, more so to begin with, for sure. So I personally think that we should have the ability to do that. It's really a shame that, Dan Collison was on that board for years and he never went. And now that Jeff's going, I think it's, if he wants to vote on something, if he thinks he needs to, I think that's a good idea personally, but.
I guess I'm questioning where it says that the city has a voting member, because I'm looking at your board of directors list, and it says you have 9 positions, and there's nothing there that's a city.
It's in the lease agreement,
Okay,
I believe,
gotcha.
paragraphs in there.
It is in the lease agreement.
Okay.
and in
How
the
much longer is that
bylaws.
lease for? It's like 2047.
Yeah, 40-year lease originally.
I guess my question was, and I'm gonna kind of ask Jeff about this too, but, I mean, what was the purpose originally of having a voting member on the board? What was the
I
idea?
think because the city made such a large investment into the building, and continues to this day, and we have had some things which we've discussed before that have happened within the building that the city hasn't been made aware of, like the paving of the, area, like we weren't made aware of that, and they're supposed to request any changes inside the building should come and be approved by council first, and so we've had some of that, so, as a staff person, I'm not recommending at this time to remove it from a voting member, just because we are finally getting representation there. I think we've built a really good working relationship, and I want it to stay that way, but just on behalf of the city, like, it's not my recommendation at this time.
Other than the fact of the city owning that building, I mean, Rum River BMX pretty much takes care of that building. Unless there's major things that the city has to be involved with the building structure itself. I mean, I don't care if they want to paint something in there, that's, as far as I'm concerned, they're managing that thing. I mean, I don't want to ever tie their hands, they got a great thing going there.
It wasn't painting, it was paving,
Paving?
yes.
Well, there again, that's what that building's used for. I mean, if they're gonna pay for it and do it, I could care less about that. But I feel that, along with Councilman Merrill, is the same thing, as the city's got a vested interest in that thing, is, I guess it'd be best to, if nothing else, we at least know what's going on all the time. And who's to say, an election's coming up, it changes and Jeff no longer goes there, or Jeff no longer has any interest in anything over there. He's obviously got a vested interest in it because he's there all the time. Kudos to him. But it could fall back in the same thing, like, Dan Collison wasn't there representing us all the time, which he, did keep us abreast of what was going on quite a bit, but I just hate to lose that touch. The situation with him being there now, we know he's there and we know what's going on, but
I think something like that is there for if needed. Like, say if the whole association goes haywire for whatever reason, you never really know. It just protects the city from risk, whatever. Because once you remove that voting member, now the city doesn't really have any sort of influence on it, so.
Yeah, and I've never seen any member up here have any problem with anything that BMX has ever wanted, so it seems like we have a really good relationship, and you guys pretty much get whatever you ask for.
And that's not the direction my board was really going with it. Like I said, we'd rather have somebody from the city at every meeting, to know what we're doing and what we're, but having a vote in whether or not we decide to spend $1,000 to get decorations, that's what they were questioning. You know what I mean? Like, that part of it, just having a voting member, if one board member brought an example of, if say I was going to rent a building for my company from somebody, I'm the renter, and they own the building, but they don't necessarily have
Say in your
say in what I'm
organization.
doing in my company. So it's along those lines. I'm just trying to explain it better what
Right.
they're asking.
I think whatever council member was on that board would have the best interest of the BMX, but just be looking after the city's interest. I mean,
the guy that we need to hear from is sitting right here.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm 100% in favor of the city not having a voice or a vote on their board. That's a separate organization. If we're a bunch of guys up here saying we want to limit government, this is one way we can do it. They can always load up that board and make our vote even more diluted. So what's the point? Dan Collison didn't show up for a long time. They ran it just fine. If they're going to go behind their back and do some changes, well, then we put some provisions in our agreement, and they have to pay for that. They're renters, we're the landlords. Why do we need to be on a voting member on their board? That's my stance.
I think it just saves us from potential risk. That's.
But they can dilute that risk at any
Yeah,
time.
True.
So what is the point?
Well, I know at the hockey arena, when the city was the major funder, the city at one time at the hockey arena, we carried that loan for a long time, and it got taken care of, and then we stepped away.
I actually had someone reach out asking if the city would get back involved with that potentially. So now it's the opposite of what they want. So it's like,
Well-
if sometime down the road, they could decide that, they want the city involved again, and
it all would depend on that hockey arena.
Oh, right, but I'm just saying.
The hockey arena was a little different story because the people that had it drove it in the ground and then somebody else stepped in. As long as the city's made whole on this, I could care less either way. The city has to be made whole.
Right.
You know, I guess I wouldn't want them to go along and all of a sudden start adding on to the building without city's approval, because that is city land and city-owned building. I mean, that, I don't disagree with Mr. Holmgren on that situation with that, maybe that needs to be more clarified, that when things are being done, we at least be notified of it. Because I know for a fact that the BMX pays for a lot of the stuff they've done in that building. And which, you know, they go in to redesign the track, all that stuff. I know Public Works has gone and helped them with some of that stuff. You know, in which BMX has done nothing but great things for the city, so I don't want to tie their hands at all.
I don't either, and you know, Jeff, what you're saying makes 100% sense, and I agree with you a lot of ways, but then I look at it on a business aspect only. The city, when somebody is the biggest shareholder of a company, which I don't know if Isani is, but I got a feeling we're really close to the biggest shareholder, they always have somebody on the board. That's the only aspect I'm looking at this as. But what you said makes total sense too.
But I also, if something else happens, another organization comes in with something not to do with the BMX building, but another situation like that. And the city, and they say, well, you let BMX get by without that, why are you making me do it? So it sets a double standard when you do that. So it's a double-edged sword.
I know.
I for one have been many years, I have never denied BMX anything they've ever wanted to do there. Matter of fact, I was one that pushed for them to get more money of the parking revenue, because they're the ones that are putting on the event. And that's how they make money, and they've been making those payments on that building, plain and simple. But I don't know, it's kind of a bad thing, because you get that double-edged sword. If some other organization was to do something, then you say, well, they say, well, the BMX didn't do it. Well, then we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Have you had issues with ties, like tie votes?
It does come up once in a great while, but not, you know, not very often.
Like since Jeff has been there and actually being a member, has there ever been a tie where it was a problem?
I abstain from a lot of the voting because a lot of it has to do with them putting on races and the daily stuff.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with the city.
yeah.
So why do I need to vote
I
on?
mean, we don't have a copy of the lease in this stuff here, so I mean, I haven't reviewed it. So, but I don't know, I mean, if there's, I would imagine, like you said, Jeff, a lot of the language is probably in there to protect us from, you know, just them doing whatever they want, you know, wherever they want, I would think. So, I mean, I don't know that it necessarily matters to be involved in their daily operations, which it sounds like is the majority of what's discussed there, and anything that would be major changes would have to come before us anyway, right? So,
It should, yes.
yeah.
Could there be language stating that?
But even if it doesn't, I'm sure we have ways to go about handling that, you know, I mean, if it ever was
It's in the lease
actually an issue, yeah, so.
Could there be language stating that they be a board member, but a non-voting board member as per their daily business operations, but when it comes to renovations or anything like that, they would have to be able to have a vote? I wonder if there's a way we can have that language in there. They'd be a board member, but non-voting board member on the day-to-day business. You know what I'm saying?
It's kind of like what Jeff is doing right now. I'm sure if there was something that was city pertinent, you would not abstain and you would
Yeah,
vote.
absolutely, but
So that would be a decent compromise.
there's a lot of the conversations is between them,
Right.
and I'm just sitting there and just listening to them put on races, you know, banners and, you know, which dates and all that stuff, so it's just like,
What it kind of boils down to is like, you know, I've tried to do my best to work with Matt, you know, with anything that we have or the building, you know, I can't speak for before me. But, and then also speaking to your double-edged sword, it's the same thing, you know, if Jeff doesn't continue on the council and we get somebody that doesn't like us, or if our board goes completely south and there's people you don't like, you know, so, but, you know, maybe a non-voting board member makes sense. Because like I said, we welcome the city to come and listen to our board. I mean, there's nothing to hide. You know, I mean, we're just talking about stuff we want to do, and, you know, it's nice to have somebody from the city there to say, okay, well, that's something that, you know, you for sure need to, you know, get approval for or something like that. You know, it makes it easier for us to decide what's going on too, so.
I don't think it's a bad idea to have a non-voting board member.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I don't think that
Then
we
that
should
doesn't
be
screw up your voting.
dictating their organization or have, you know, it's a diluted vote, so we would make 10.
Yeah, and that sounds good to me. I don't think you could make it, you know, a sometimes votes and sometimes doesn't vote, like you guys were saying, but, you know, I think it'd be hard to define what's city business and what's not, I guess, but I'm fine if you guys want to change it to a non-voting board member.
How many board members are there? Are there 9?
9 currently, yeah.
I don't think we should
Have you ever taken a
change it.
vote?
Not that I can remember. There was one time where I thought maybe I'd be a tiebreaker, but it didn't even come close, so I didn't even vote then, so. But yeah, I always viewed it as if there was a breaking vote, which clearly there wasn't because there's 9 people, but, or if I thought that the city was in, you know, in jeopardy or, you know, there was cost to the billing or something like that, yeah, I would step in, but none of the issues in the last year have been brought up to where it would affect the city. And I know there's been issues in the past with doing stuff to the structure of the building, but that was in the past, that's not the current board. And we should put in provisions in there so that stuff doesn't happen. If it does happen, it's on the cost of the BMX. But I'd rather not vote within their organization as a government official.
I'm sure that language is in the lease, I would guess, too. I mean, it's just, if it was an issue, we could probably enforce some other penalties or whatever if it was needed, but I mean, it hasn't been, even if they paved inside the building, I'm guessing it was a good thing that it was done. I don't think we had a problem with it, but it was probably just something that needed to be done a different way, I guess, so.
I guess I don't think we should make a decision on it before Josie and city staff looks at it more, because we could just make a decision right now that doesn't protect the city.
Well, I don't think we can make a decision, because if it's wrote in a lease, we're gonna have to vote
we're gonna
on the
be-
lease, because we're gonna have to change the lease, and we're gonna have to take a vote at council.
Okay.
So we're gonna all have to look at the lease anyway before we make a decision.
We will be, you guys did have the lease a few weeks ago, because we were discussing the changes that were being made just for the roof language, and so that will come back after I receive some language from, that we're working out on our end here this week, for that to come to a compromise, but, so that will come back, but it'd be nice to make this change at the same time. I will agree that the city does not want to get involved in their day-to-day business. It's just for the protection of the building. So, as long as we can agree that the lease agreement is doing that work, then we don't want to have a voting member voting on their.
So, and that's a good thing with a board, as a city representative is a non-voting board member, they could still at least put in their 2 cents to them.
Yes.
Right.
And then we'll be aware of those changes. And then they would have to come to us for it. I mean, I just think making them a non-voting board member would be the best way of doing it.
I agree.
Recently this year too, I did lower, you know, our board member spending limit to down about $300. So anything above $300 needs board approval to spend on. So, I mean, anything major that's happening to the building needs a vote from us first anyways. And as long as you guys have somebody there, they know that that's coming, or, you know, can advise that, you know, what we need to do to get that done.
Yeah. I think you got 4-1 consensus. Okay, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
I have another question about the BMX, Stephanie. When is the RFP for the repair on the bolts? And when does that close?
Monday.
Monday, okay. Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to number 2, which is going to be the street dance discussions. And that was one that I had asked to bring up. So I think, talking to vendors and stuff at this last street dance, I think we've got to get rid of the amp it up dances. And I think we should try, just go back to three dances on Main Street and do them in the summertime instead of the 4. So we've done 4 ever since as soon as we came out of COVID, we did the 4th one because we wanted to.
2021.
So was it 2021? Okay. But I think we should just go back to doing 3 I think it was 21,
It was my first year of doing it.
was it?
our first one.
I thought we'd added a fourth one.
There was a small, like, welcome one, but it was, I'm pretty sure 22 was the first one that we held.
I thought it was after we were coming out of COVID, because we were sticking it to the man, saying we couldn't get together.
I
Pretty
think there was a street dance, but I'm pretty sure Jordan and I planned the first to Amp It Up.
Oh, I was talking about street dances, the fourth street dance, yeah. I wasn't talking about the Amp It Up. Yeah, you're probably right on the Amp It Up. But that would, just the, talking with the Lions and other vendors, and we even had a tough time getting vendors to show up at the.
It
the
felt
last-
so dead.
Yeah, and I think part of that was time of year, because we had pushed it off, so a lot of the vendors were wrapping up for the season already. But if it was a good event, they probably wouldn't wrap it up for the season, was my thought. So I just think the Amp It Up has not been well attended, and the vendors are, I think if you continue to do it there, you're gonna have a tough time getting them to show up, to actually be there, so.
I would agree with that. I talked to a few of them as well, kind of the same deal. Now, it could be because of the October thing. You know, it's a little bit out of the normal, like, routine for people.
Well, I mean, the other one that we do is usually like mid-September, so I mean, it was a couple weeks later than
Right.
the previous year's last street dance, but, or Amp It Up, but I think it's, even the first Amp It Up was slow. I think the Lions said they didn't even make it through one keg of beer for selling beer, so, you know, I think they do considerably better than that on Main Street.
Yeah, they do. They reached out to me about that a couple times, a few of them now, so. Is there, I don't know that amphitheater is the best thing for the city. Have we ever considered selling it?
Not that I'm aware of. I've only.
Can't,
it's only
because it's on
been here.
it's on city-owned land.
I mean,
You can sell
take it
city-owned
apart,
land. What's that?
take it apart, have somebody take it
I don't
apart.
know, it's just, I don't know.
I would
Sell the
like to
wood.
say that we did have a few good reviews on Facebook saying how great they appreciated Amp It Up and said it was a great opportunity for families to get together. It's definitely a different crowd, and just keeping in mind that we're not hosting these events for vendors. We are hosting them for our community members and not for them. That's really.
No,
not-
and I'm not saying that we
But-
aren't, I mean, that's not what I'm saying, but I mean, if you want your community to have a good event, you need vendors to show up. And I think there's a real danger that they're gonna stop showing up if we continue to do it at Amp It Up, I think.
Sean did do a really good job of getting bands and running
Oh,
it.
yeah,
He did a great
Yeah,
job,
it
so
was a
it's
great,
not to
it was a
discount
great
that.
show, and I like it at the amphitheater personally. I mean, I think it's nice, but if people aren't showing up, then it's,
Deceiving for the crowd numbers. Before, for Amp It Up, last summer when we did it, we actually had a few thousand more people at Amp It Up because it's such a larger space that it's hard to tell how many people are there. The street dances are so condensed. So that's definitely hard to compare, and it is a different crowd. There's a lot more families and children than there are at the street dance. I know that it takes overtime. Saturday is for 2 public works staff to come in prior and after the performance. When we do Amp It Up, nobody has to come in on Saturday. They set up Friday and take down Monday. I know we have a lot of electric hookups, so it's actually easier for us to set everything up. All of the bands definitely prefer the amphitheater over the other stage. The other stage we would have to look at eventually getting repaired here because it's becoming very rickety and not unsafe, and we get a lot of complaints about it actually from the band members. And if there's rain or any weather at all, like, they'll shut down a lot quicker at the street dance than they will at the amphitheater because their stuff isn't protected.
I think Stephanie has a lot of good points, but a street dance is a street dance. I never thought we should move it over to Amp It Up, or to the amphitheater. But I think we should come up with something for families and kids, some
well,
kind of
and we do
venue
have
to
a lot
fill
of
it.
events we have the Curious Creatures and
Splish Splash.
Splish Splash is
Something-
out there, and, I mean, we have a lot of stuff that we do use the amphitheater for, but, go ahead, sorry.
Maybe find a teens band or a kids band or maybe to fill in the activity we're taking away. Keep the 3 street dances a year on Main Street, which I think they should stay for forever, because it's just a completely different vibe. It's a different feel. But maybe try to find something to fill in the gap and give families a chance to, have some clean fun. You know, not have beer maybe there or whatever, bring your own.
For me, it seemed like it was too dark too at the Amp It Up event. I don't know if there's anything we could do for like ambient light. I think the darkness makes it seem like you don't really want to approach anybody or be social because it's like you can't even see who anybody is. And I think that might be a hindrance too. It makes people feel like they're less social, so it's less of an event versus just standing around.
We did get good feedback on putting the lights in the trees this time, and that's something we could consider just leaving up all year round. We did add another light at the playground last year for that reason, and so it's getting more lit up. There's that happy medium, obviously, where you don't want it to be too bright, so we could turn on the sledding hill lights, but then it gets to be really bright, so just trying to add more lighting that way is what we've been trying to do as, from a staff standpoint.
Does PD have any portable lighting? No. What's that? Fire does? I mean, maybe, I don't know if you could just have something in the middle of the area and just have it shoot up and just to get a little ambient light from it. It just feels so dark and it doesn't, I don't know, it just didn't, that part to me makes it seem like it's not really that great of an event just because you can't see or know who's there or anything. I don't know. I would hate to say just ditch the whole amphitheater, but I mean, it's kind of seems like a waste of money and it's, I don't know how to go, where we should go with it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the residents who voted with their feet, I mean, they show up for the Main Street dances and the street dances, but they don't show up at the amphitheater, so. Both of the ones that we did this year were not well attended, and it's not just the Lions that are complaining. I mean, and I think that's the best way to gauge attendance is how are the vendors actually selling product, and I mean, if they're not, then, like I said, they're not gonna continue to show up. I mean, they're not satisfied with, they want the crowds that the Main Street dances bring in, so.
Well, they don't sell as much beer because it's not a social event. It's more of a, family event, concert. You're not going around talking to all your neighbors and meeting new neighbors because you're pretty much sitting where you're sitting. It's just completely different, in my opinion. But be nice if we take a look at it this summer and see if we can find some way to fill a little bit of a gap there and still have a big family thing somehow, some way. I don't know what.
When you talk about that, George, was years ago, my ex-father-in-law used to have polka services, and you'd go around to all the churches and play polka services. Wish we could get a church to maybe do some of their services at the amphitheater. The only problem is we have with that was, and I don't know what happened, the Lions were gonna donate $7,000 to benches out there. I don't know whatever happened to that, but,
We got
no place to
The
sit.
picnic tables, we got 12 picnic tables from them that are portable.
Oh,
Okay,
nice.
And we do use those at the street dances on Main Street.
yeah. But I mean, that's,
Use them a lot.
but
for a lot of
that's the biggest drawback of the amphitheater, that people can't have someplace to, sit. My daughter got married in a park in Wisconsin and was in something similar to the amphitheater, and they had permanent benches all around it. I think, Stephanie, I think we've had more interest in checking on using that for weddings or something. At first, when it was first put in, I knew there was a lot of people that asked about having weddings there, and we didn't have nothing set up for that yet.
I think there's lots of possibilities for that.
I think that the amphitheater itself, we need to put getting people to go out and start using it. I know at one time, they were talking to the schools before it was built. A few mayors ago, he said, absolutely, if the school's not gonna pay, absolutely not if the school isn't gonna pay to have plays out there. The schools is endless. They could have plays out there.
We've been working with them to try to get them to do that and playing arts, and the playing arts has zero interest. The school theater does, so, we've been reaching out to everybody in the community to see what we can do. I have reached out to churches also. We just
Great.
haven't gotten anybody moving forward. I think there's interest, I just think nobody's moved forward with it. I think one thing that could help is, we had discussed in the past putting a 20 by 40 foot slab in front of it where that could make it accessible for people, so people in wheelchairs, et cetera, could access it and get to sit on cement and not in grass. And creates a dance floor as well in front of the amphitheater, so that was one thing I know we discussed in the past.
we
That's-
discussed that quite a while ago.
That's another
We talked about
25
that.
grand.
You even thought about that at that point, thinking that.
The problem is well, I mean, we do have a raised stage that you could put
Get a lot of
on
complaints
the
about that
amphitheater,
too.
But when the people actually do get up and dance in front of the amphitheater, then nobody can see unless we use the raised stage, which I don't think we've ever actually used it there. We have it, but
They did not want it for this one, but we do have it that fills the entire area and has stairs going back to each side.
But I think what it is the issue with people not showing up at the amphitheater is more that location-wise, I mean, you just have the people that can get out and they're either older adults or they're younger adults live on the southwest side of town, and it's the people that have more of the families and the young kids that live on the amphitheater side of town, and that, that's not true for everybody, of course, but I think just generally speaking, that's probably the case. Well, the people with the young kids are not gonna come out and do that kind of stuff, and then it's too far of a walk for the older folks and the younger folks that live on the southwest side, and so I think that's really where the attendance issue comes from, is just location is probably a big part of it, so. If you wanna have a bus from Main Street over to the amphitheater, I think that might help, but I don't think we should do that. I just think we should change all of them to the Main Street, but.
I agree. I had a couple of residents in the past 2 weeks mention the street dances, and they want them on Main Street, flat out. They're like, why'd you guys move them?
We only moved one.
I'm just saying.
We did
They
add
noticed.
one.
They
And
noticed.
The fourth one was never downtown. That was just for Amp It Up always.
Yeah,
So
and-
it was only created because of the amphitheater.
And how's the splish splash stuff? It seems pretty well attended, right?
Yep, Splish
Yeah.
Splashes.
I said we focus on more of the daytime stuff for families and stuff, and then clearly they're not coming out for the night or evening time stuff.
So let me get this right. The city's always had 3 street dances a year.
Normally it was 3 street dances. Yeah.
Okay, and we added a 4th, and it's Amp It Up, and it's more of a family thing for Bluebird Park. It isn't even in the same category. So, the people that might be complaining about that should be a street dance instead, well, it's just an extra event for families.
Well, but
Mayor Gordon was right. The 4th dance was added when we came out of COVID. Because when they released COVID, I contacted a friend of mine that has a band, Bad Jacks.
Yep.
And they weren't playing yet. And he called the band members and they said, yes, we can do it. They discounted it to us, and ever since then, we've had the 4th dance.
But-
That's how that is the God's honest truth, Stephanie.
Did we have the one in June that year? Or was that one canceled? That's what I was wondering. 'Cause
We didn't have the dance, so it was pushed off. So we canceled it, but they rescheduled it, is what they did. They rescheduled it. And then when we had that opening, that's when I called my friend with Bad Jack. And they came and played. And that's how we ended up with 4 street dances. Because everybody wanted to get out of the house and start enjoying life after COVID.
And then I think it did go well, and so then we added
Then we added
it again next year.
And
yeah.
then the amphitheater, we kind of moved
Amphi-
1 or 2 out to it to see how it went. And I'll be totally honest with you, I don't go to the street dances. By the time they start, I'm ready for bed. So, I just don't go to them.
At least you're honest.
I'm being honest. It's not my thing. I have to get here and I gotta park and I gotta walk 6 blocks. Dude, I walking up there today. I ain't walking there. And it's nothing against it. I support it. It just, because I don't attend it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
I think at first the amphitheater events did have good attendance, so what's missing? Why are they not coming back? That's the question, I guess.
I think unfortunately our times have changed. It's just like this is an odd election. This is one of the weirdest elections I've ever seen. Because normally, so I speak from experience in construction, right now, things are booming. 2 months ago, things have shut down. Major companies have laid off people because they've taken projects and pushed them, because they don't know what's gonna happen in November. We can speculate what's gonna happen, but we don't know until that next day after the election, what's gonna happen. And nobody's spending money right now because of that. That's why I said this is an odd election. And I think people have seen that in the last year and a half, is it's been small bites taken off as the time has come. Now it's getting closer, now crunch time. But normally in an election, everything is, the one side is trying to do everything they can and people are doing things. Now it's, inflation is so bad, interest rates up, people don't want to spend money unless they absolutely positively have to, or they're forced to do it, they don't want to do it. I mean, it's just like you replacing your furnace. You wouldn't replace it if you didn't have to.
So do we already have the 4 events budgeted for next year? Are they already in the budget?
Yes.
Why don't we just keep that in the budget and talk about this spring, whether we're gonna even, if we wanna keep that 4th event, or change it, or do something
We
different,
have-
downsize it?
We have to schedule it earlier than that, or we won't have
Oh,
anybody.
right, to be able to find somebody.
Also, my suggestion maybe is, because we are talking about families, is maybe we move the Amp It Up earlier. Maybe that's the thing. If we know it's families going, maybe it goes from 4 to 8. Just a thought. Maybe that's how we
Right.
Well,
get more
I
families.
mean, I will say
idea.
that if you go to the Amp It
Or
Up stuff,
5
nobody's
times.
there at 7, and people start to come at like 8 maybe. I mean, it's definitely, it's not, the street dances definitely have a better attendance rate from the beginning too. And they Amp It Up isn't until
Could be
later, for
after
sure.
kids are going to bed. I'm not sure. Just trying to throw out ideas why I, as a parent.
Or like Stephanie says, is maybe have an earlier one as an amp it up out there, because everybody's been cooped in all winter. Now they wanna get out, maybe move it up a few weeks, whatever, to start earlier. Since it's already in the budget, we gotta have to make a decision on the bands, or have they made decisions for bands already?
Nope, we're just getting ready to.
Yeah,
Usually
so-
October.
How much does each street dance cost us? Is it about, I think, just the band, I think on the last one was, we had 2 bands, but I
Well,
think it was 6,000
yeah,
and the
that one was the
promoter.
most
But that one was
expensive
unique,
one, yeah.
yeah.
So
And that was a
that was
great
expensive.
show. I mean, they did a great job. I mean, I think
Both bands were
following
killer,
that,
yeah.
you could definitely do that style of show and do it earlier in the summer and at a street dance. I think it would be really well received, but Mike, you were gonna say the cost there is,
Yeah, you're paying for what you get, right? So it's, I mean, it can be anywhere from $1,500 to $6,000.
just for the band, yeah.
And we do bands of all different ranges, so it just depends. Mostly trying to get ones with good reviews. We listen to them all to make
So
sure.
what do we have budgeted for just the 4 dances total?
$20,000 total, including trash.
So we figure 5 a dance, or
Roughly.
basically.
What about staff time for each event? Have we ever tracked that or had any idea? Because you gotta consider that. If staff time is an extra 10,000 on top of that, that's a fairly substantial difference.
Staff time for having street dances is more expensive than it is for Amp It Up, just because of the logistics that need to happen and the time it takes to shut down streets and all of that and clean up, sweep streets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think in extra staff time, right? Because if we have a full-time person in City Hall that is in charge of planning it, I wouldn't consider that like an extra cost, right? I think about like Public Works being there in the evening after hours, but no, we're not getting close to 10 grand on those costs.
Okay.
It's
I mean,
just
maybe,
part of what they
maybe
do.
you find a way to get to 2 grand,
Okay.
you know, maybe,
But then, yeah, I guess.
you know. You know, against what we have budgeted of like, you know, roughly 20 grand, it's not a particularly large amount.
So I guess the question is it worth, say, $6,000-7,000 to have an event at the amphitheater? You think there's enough people that go to it for it to be worth that $1 a resident that it would cost us, basically? That's the
I would do more of a splish splash type of event, bring in, all the jungle gyms and all that kind of stuff.
Well, then we can always add more stuff
Yeah.
if we want to in the future.
But
But,
I just
and I'm not saying we can't ever go back to the amphitheater. I'm just thinking, right now, where our population is at and where the people actually show up and come and attend these events is on Main Street. And I think we should just do 3 instead of 4, so it's not something where people are getting burnt out, and I know it's a little bit more work for Public Works to have it on Main Street, you know, for sure, but I think if we're not getting people to show up at the Amp It Up stuff, that it's just not, you know, why do it if they're not gonna come and attend, you know? So,
Could we do a Facebook poll too and ask, would you rather attend at the street or at the Amp It, Amp It Up and see? I mean, if it's 50,
but, I mean, you can just see it, you already know if they're coming or not, you know what I mean? So, what's the point of doing a
but
poll?
the tightness of the space it might be deceiving too.
I think it really is, because we can hold
I know, it may be,
7,000
but the
people.
vendors don't lie, like, that
Yeah.
is when they say, hey, what better indication would you have of attendance than
I do
are people
agree,
spending
but
money
I
or
also
not?
think families going to an event at 7 are different considering what they're gonna buy from a vendor. Like, they might say, hey, we're gonna eat dinner first, and then we're gonna go. Whereas, like, if you're going out on date night, you're like, nope, we're waiting to eat till we get there. Like, so I think there's different mindsets too of different crowds going, so. And then we do have the skate park kids are usually there for these events too, so you're getting just a general different age group going to the Amp It Up than you are.
These meetings would just go so much faster if you guys would just all agree with me.
Right? I mean, I'm with Luke on a poll, but if we're gonna do a poll, I'd rather see doing a poll saying, if we get rid of Amp It Up, what other amenity would you like, or something, like, would you like the Snow
Summertime
Hill
event.
High, or would you like, you know what I mean, something like that.
All right,
but-
what's the consensus here? Let's go down the line here. Jeff, move them to Main Street, and I guess it's two questions. Move it to Main Street or keep them on the amphitheater, and do you like 4 or 3?
I like 3 and moving to Main Street, because I've had several residents in the last 2 weeks tell me they'd rather have it on Main Street.
Okay, that would be where I'm at too. Steve, what do you think?
Like I said, I don't go to them, so it's hard for me to judge that, and I've never had complaint either way, either or. I will say this, that when there is a street dance, it congests Main Street, and it does affect the businesses that are operating during the day while they're setting up and blocking the street off. And that's not fair to the businesses at that point. I've had people that lived on Main Street in some of those apartments complain about them because it's noisy for them and they're trying to relax or whatever, but they also knew that when they moved there, so. I just like to see the amphitheater get used, and that's what it's there for. You know, going from 4 to 3, I don't think it's a deal breaker either way. So if it was back to 3, that's fine with me. I think that when we did make it 4, it was for a reason, and, you know, times have changed since then. I do agree with Councilman Heeman on the fact that it'd be nice to have something out there for a family event. How we do it, I guess we'd have to look at what we can or can't do there.
Luke?
I think there's potential for the amphitheater somewhat, but I just know that if we get rid of this event, a lot of people in the community are gonna feel like that money was really wasted on that amphitheater. If it's not even really getting used, that's not,
It does get used. It's used
Yeah.
for the stuff in the summertime and the Curious Creatures and the kids' days and.
but is that enough to
It is
justify keeping it and we're gonna have to maintain it at some point? I mean,
It's there already.
yeah, so I think what we should do is try one more year of it. I mean, I was gonna come into this saying no more amphitheater, but I think there's maybe opportunities for us to improve the event. I think we should move all the food trucks and stuff in closer, so it feels like it's more like, so the vendors are more a part of it.
There was only one food truck there. Yeah, I guess there was
There was
one
a few.
food truck and there was a mini donut stand and popcorn, but
Yep, and then beer
Then
stuff. It just, it felt too
typically you
far,
have-
they felt too far away, and it made the place seem empty, and then, of course, you're not gonna walk all the way a quarter mile to a vendor when it's, I mean, that's exaggerating, but it didn't seem like a tight-knit group of people or like community to me.
you didn't have any problem walking to the Lions, the
Oh, of course
beer
not.
trailer, I didn't
Of
think.
course not. No, they were close, but the other ones, they just seemed all so far away, so I don't know if we could maybe move them in closer, and then maybe their lights would give a little bit more ambient light, I don't know, I think there's some potential there to make it better, but I don't know. As far as the 3 or 4, I could go either way on that. I think if we're gonna have the amphitheater, we keep it at 4. If we're gonna just do the street dances, we keep it at 3. So we have one amphitheater event a year. I think it's probably where I would be, one more year trying. Because I know Sean loves it from, what is his name, Happy Productions? He loves that amphitheater, so I think if we give him the opportunity, I think he's gonna continue to help push. That was one thing I talked to him at the chamber meeting, and he was like, dude, I wanna use that amphitheater. So I know he's stoked about getting some time there to get those bands and,
Well, we can rent it to them.
oh, right, I mean, do
Well,
we
that was
sell
part of the whole
rent
deal
the
is
event and just have
bands
him
rent it
handle it?
out.
Yeah,
Well,
that'd be
tell 'em to
fine
rent it
too.
out.
All right. So Luke, you're kind of undecided at this point?
Nah, I
sir,
think
or
we should give it one more year of trying something at the
Keep
amphitheater.
it the same for one more year,
Yeah,
okay? George, what do you think?
Well, the way I'm looking at it is, true, most people want the dances on the street. But on the flip side, yeah, I did see those reviews too, they were really good. But if we're gonna move it down to 3, then the people that are complaining they want it on the street are gonna be out one dance, so, you know what I mean? Instead of, we're going down to 3 and eliminating the other. I'm on the fence on it, I mean, if we're doing it to give the community the best bang for the buck, and that's why we're gonna get rid of it, and we can justify it that way, I'd be okay with it. But Luke got me brainstorming when you mentioned that. We could take some of that money and maybe, it's just an idea, open mic night and have $100 or
Comedy show.
$200 prize per night, and we could probably have really cheap music there. You know, a couple, 3, 4 weekends a summer.
I just think if these were all good ideas and the community wanted it, I think there's people who put on comedy shows would rent that thing out and sell tickets and that type of stuff.
Sure. I think there's a lot more possibilities with that theater. We should look at that. But I'm okay with just 3. And I'd like to see more use out of that theater if we're keeping it.
So what do you think as far as moving the dances back to Main Street, or? So you would-
Yes.
So you would say do 3 and move it back to Main? But you'd like to continue to think about different ways we could use that amphitheater?
Yes, and maybe even use some of that budgeted money that's already there for next year, and look for different ways to give more opportunities to use it and more opportunities for families to come out and enjoy some kind of venue.
I think you could throw on another Splish Splash event maybe earlier in the spring, or that's where I think families like to go and kids like the interaction with all the attractions. I just don't know if the bands are doing it for the kids. So, but yeah, we can brainstorm all day.
I don't think we should get rid of it yet. It was kind of chilly. It's just, I don't know. I think it's fairly new. We haven't really tried much different stuff because we've thought it's been successful. You have one slightly less successful year. This year seemed like less. The last couple of years, it seemed fairly busy. Now, the Lions said they sold less, but it still seemed like it was well attended. This year, I think it might be like a slight anomaly. Just, it was cooler out. You know, it wasn't the normal time in September. It just was different.
It's always gonna be something.
Yeah.
All right, I think you got 3 street dances and moving back to Main Street. And so, I don't know if we can bring that to council on the 7th, or?
Yep,
Okay,
we'll bring something forward.
okay, thank you. Let's see, so now we're gonna change to number 3, the snowmaker discussion. So, Lucas, I think you had kind of wanted to bring that up, but it looked like there was
Yes, I did.
new information, so.
So I was not expecting that each machine would necessarily need its own unit. Now, if you look at the manufacturer specifications, it gives a huge range, 1 to 10 gallons per minute each. Okay, so is it 1 or is it 10? Because if it's only, say if it's only 2 gallons per minute it's required, and you have 5 of them, well, now you can just have 1 10-gallon per minute pressure washer to run them all. That's a huge difference. That's such a big range. So I wanted to know, I wouldn't be for spending the extra money, because what was it, an extra 12,000 or an extra $12,000 just to outfit, you know, pressure washers. So I guess I wouldn't be for it, and that's why I brought it up, because I don't think we really had much of an idea of how much more on top of the $5,000 it was gonna be. So I don't know if there's a way that we can get one larger pressure washer and compressor that'll run it all. It just seems like a lot of messing around too.
Well, that was, I went back and listened to our discussion from last time, and you, actually, during that discussion, you said, you know, let's hold off on buying a fifth gun if we can run 4 off of one pressure
Correct.
washer.
Exactly.
And nobody corrected us, but in the document that Julia had sent, she did say it needs 1 pressure washer per gun, but for some reason in that conversation, we had gotten off the rails, I guess, and nobody caught it, so.
That-
Yeah,
I don't
I don't know, Matt, I mean, what Luke's saying is kind of what I was questioning too, is, well, if it says it can run on 1 to 10, 5 and 10 being the optimal, you know, gallons per minute, but if we can run it on less, you know, I don't know, do we just get less production out of each gun then, so you're not?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, the one thing that I can add to that is there's a lot of unknowns. Because we have never tried to run, getting the volume of water from a hydrant is gonna be an issue. Getting the pressure to each unit and an air compressor being able to keep up with all 5 of these units, I think that's the real unknown that we don't know, and we won't know until it gets cold outside. To be able to just know, okay, a 10-gallon air compressor, it'll run 3, it won't run 5. You know what I mean? So there's just other stuff in there. Will the air compressor keep up? Well, it'll keep up with 3. You know, when you look at the manual or the box down there, it says, you know, 1 pressure washer, 1 air compressor is what it's saying down there. Pressure washer needs to have this much pressure to be able to do it. I know we tried it before in the pressure washer, what we tried to build, it didn't create enough to make it work. So there's still a lot of unknowns in what this machine is capable of. You know, do we need 5? I don't know if we need 5. We have 5 down there, maybe 3 of them would keep up. I can
Right.
tell you this, that snow blows off that sledding hill
Yeah.
and doesn't always land on it. It takes, you know, and I think that it would stay there longer. Once there was snow there and kids started to use the sledding hill, it would pack down. But it does face that one, kind of that south direction there, so it does catch a lot of sun. But once we've got a snowpack on there, it seems like it's been really good and lasted. But there's just a lot of unknowns that, and we can start out with getting a 10-gallon pressure washer and see, you know, how we make that work. We'll, you know, and just see what that will run. I don't know.
So-
And that's where those unknowns, what I'm,
My assumption is they say 1 to 10, depending on how much snow you need to make.
Right.
That's the
And
way
length of
I
hose
interpret
and all that stuff probably.
You know, I don't disagree with you about buying 5 pressure washers. I would probably say maybe a second one and a second compressor, and maybe we can get 3, 4 guns working, and maybe as time goes, we come across another pressure washer and a compressor. I don't think we should return the snowmakers. I think we should keep them, but I think maybe we should at least get another pressure washer and a compressor, be conservative on that, and let's see how it works.
Well,
And if
and
it becomes an issue, we can add more.
I just went to Menards and just thought, well, let me just see what's kind of available there. And I don't know how big of an air compressor you need, but there's a 20-gallon that does 5.2 CFM at 90 PSI, and after rebate was $347. You know, I'm sure it's nothing fancy, and I don't know how big of one you need, like I said, but, and then they have 1 pressure washer. The highest gallons per minute that they had there was like 4.5, and that was 398 after rebate, so.
And there's another trick you can do with the compressors. You find some water heaters that don't leak and use them as buffer tanks.
Yep.
So the compressor actually fills up the 2 tanks. That's where you run into the problem with that compressor keeping up, is the volume of air. It's not the compressor keeping up, it's the volume of air. You can get I got a pancake compressor, it's cordless at home.
Yeah.
It doesn't keep up with a nail gun, because you're firing so fast, the compressor, there's not enough volume. If you had a larger storage capacity, it would keep up better. A lot of framers, that's what they do, is they use the old steel galvanized tanks they get from Wells, and they hook their compressors to that, plus their tank on their compressor, and then they pull all their hoses off, and that keeps them going all day long on that. And that nail guns use a lot of air.
How does our jet truck work? Is that got an onboard air compressor?
No.
No? Okay. Have we talked, I know Wild Mountain recommended these. I find it very hard to believe that a place that, you know, has a snow hill or anything would have a separate compressor for each one. I would think they'd have one main one and they'd plumb them all together. Have we talked to anybody about finding a large one?
They do not use this. They have their own one. This is one he uses personally, so just.
How far of a distance is it from the theater to the hill? I mean, couldn't we mount a permanent one in one of the rooms of the theater and just an industrial sized one that could feed all 4 of them at once?
That I'm not sure.
It does require different fittings that we'd have to purchase, for each of the snowmakers, and I'm not sure what those, sorry, I'm just pulling this up. I'm not sure what the cost is for those, so we'd have to look up to see.
Like Y fittings?
Is.
Like a splitter fitting?
I don't think fittings will cost much.
Or the coupler
Yeah.
fittings.
Yeah, they're not
That'd be
gonna
my only
much.
think that'd be the difference. And that, whatever you're using for hose. But you can also get a large gas-powered or a compressor, like you use for running jackhammers. You have one of them, don't you?
We have one of those, we do.
And there you could take and bring that down and put it in the splitter, and that'll probably give you more than enough air for all of them.
Right.
It's just the pressure washer is the issue. I would think that big compressor would probably, gas-powered or diesel-powered generator, or air compressor, would handle that air.
That would definitely be an option. That'd be a great place to start.
You know, and then maybe not buy the extra compressors, go with that compressor, and get the extra pressure washers.
What are the specs on the pressure washer? Because I'm not seeing them on my page, because
One-
that seems really high.
They said
1,800.
5 to 10 gallons per minute is optimal, but like I said, at Menards, you have one that's 4.5, and it says it'll work between 1 and 10, but
Says between 1 and 10 gallons
Okay,
per
one-
minute at how many CFM or whatever, and that's such a big range.
That's really vague.
It's
And they're not
super vague.
1,800, they're like 500 apiece if you buy the, medium, 600 at most, medium of the line pressure
Yeah, I mean, I
washer
think
at
the-
Menards.
I would suggest that maybe Matt do a little research and check with Menards or at Northern or Fleet Farm or whatever and see what we can, if we can find a pressure washer that's gonna, I think compressor issue solved. I think that's solved the issue, it's the pressure washers.
And I think that the other difference is with the pressure washer is the quality of snow that you're gonna get. Are you gonna get ice crystals, or is it gonna, actually be more of a
Yeah.
flake than
Can-
anything?
And I think
Can
it
the
said
manuf-
between 5 and 10 was, 5 was, actually, I think it was 5 was perfect, but I think it says you're not gonna get more production by going to higher gallons per minute, so I mean, or it might have even said
You're right.
quality, is it, am I?
And quality of
And
snow.
quality, it's gonna be the same,
Around 5 is what you really want.
around 5 is
it
what you
to.
want, so.
I mean, couldn't we just ask the manufacturer if we have 5 of them and we want to run them all off of one, or what is the actual, not the 1 to 10 gallon per minute range, because that's bogus. Like, what is actually in real life, what would they recommend? And how much something like that would cost?
They have to have it.
They have to know,
I can do that research.
yeah.
I think we should let Matt do the research and see if we come back around on that.
So the question was, though, do we want to return them? I think we can come up with a solution that'll work, don't you guys?
I don't think we want to return them. One breaks, we always got a spare.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna pay 10% restocking fee, they'd have to be returned now, and we're gonna pay a 10% restocking fee.
Yeah, right.
It's just gonna cost us money again.
Right.
I don't want to spend the extra $12,000 on it, though.
No, but I think we can,
Okay.
we've already got the air compressor part
Yep.
figured out, we think, and then it's just a matter of the pressure washers, I guess. We'd have to find a solution, but,
I think the other part with the pressure washer also is the amount of snow that you can make. The more water you're forcing through there, the more snow you're gonna make.
right.
So and then I know that temperature has a lot to do with it too. There's like an optimum temperature to make it. You don't want it super, super cold, but you don't want it close to be at that freezing mark either. So there's an optimum, just like when we make ice out on the pleasure rink out there, it's kind of like that 20 degrees. It doesn't freeze too fast.
Right.
It'll freeze, and it freezes, lays down nice and flat. It's just like that 20 degrees when it's outside to make ice is like ideal.
Well, even if it gets too cold, but it's, hardly ever snows when it's 0, it's usually a little warmer, so. Okay, well, I think the consensus is keep them, let's try to find a different solution. Sounds like we kind of got maybe at least some direction. Okay. All right, can I get a motion to go to recess, I guess, and we'll.
Motion to
resume this
recess.
After planning.
Second.
I have a motion to go into recess from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. That motion carries 5-0.